And good morning from the bear cave. Normally I have coffee in the mornings in the bear cave, but still battling this thing that I've been battling since the new year. I don't suggest getting it. It's like the flu. So I was battling it on the New Year's Eve, and now still battling it a little bit. It's hard to get rid of, but I'm doing my best. So this is just an intro to this good morning. We're going to talk about UFC this morning, and really two fighters in the UFC. I'm going to put the Ronda Rousey stuff to bed until her announcement, and then I'm going to also talk about Brock Lesnar, the 1-year suspension. So yeah, Ronda Rousey, and who's to really blame, huh, for what's happened over the last two fights, and what I think her future does hold. With Brock Lesnar, 1-year suspension, does it really affect him? Does it? But I'm going to try to get through this as quick as possible. Thank you guys for watching as always. Let's get it started. Okay, let's start with Ronda Rousey. Ronda, first off, who's to blame? I mean, you guys saw what happened to her. Really, both fights she was dominated in. The only thing is she lasts longer against Holly Holm. But who's to really blame? Well, you can start at the top. You have to put blame on Ronda Rousey. You just do. She's the fighter. She allows these people in her life, and I'll get to that in a second. So she has to take some of the blame, and I'll get more to her at the end of this part. You have to put some blame on Dana White. And now a lot of people are going to go, why Dana White? Why the promoters of UFC? Why the ownership of UFC? Why the commentators of UFC? The leaders of UFC? Whatever. Because they built the girl so high. A lot of people ask why she contemplated suicide during the last knockout. And it's because they built her so high that she's unstoppable. And that's how Dana White built her coming into this match. She's unstoppable. She's going to just dominate, and that's all there's to it. And as we saw, that wasn't the case. She actually got dominated. And that's the problem with Dana White. And you see it with a lot of these fighters that Dana White likes to uplift. And now give some credit to Ronda. Yes, she helped build this women's UFC. She has talent. And someone that looks at me and tells me Ronda Rousey was no talented fighter is a liar, because you don't win the title with no talent. I'm sorry. You don't defeat Miesha Tate that quick with no talent. You don't beat some of these girls that she beat with no talent. So she does have talent. Is the talent still there, or is she fighting scared? Those are big questions. I think she is fighting a little bit scared, maybe. Maybe her mind's just not focused no more. I don't know. But you have to put some of the blame on Dana White and the way he builds these fighters up. Yeah, he builds these fighters up to believe they're unstoppable, and when they finally get stopped, they believe that they were unstoppable, so it affects their lives. It does. You got to also put some of that blame on her coach, and this was a big one for me for this fight especially. But for the last two fights, she tried to outbox strikers. People with a little bit of a boxing background or whatever. And that's not her game. Her game, her top skill is judo. Everybody knows that. It's that ground game too. And but she didn't use the ground game in these fights, and that affected her. I really honestly believe that. I'm still a Ronda Rousey fan. I will always be Team Rousey. But I'll be the first to admit that her head got too big and that she needed to be brought down a level. I'll be the first to admit that. But yeah, that's the case. Is is her coach had her fighting upright. Her coach is an idiot. He should be fired. Because obviously he changed her game and it didn't work. Ronda Rousey is not and will never be a boxer. Her game is the ground game. So, what should Ronda Rousey do in her, or about Ronda Rousey being at blame? She allows these people. She allows this coach to continue. She allows these people in her life. She knows her where her strengths are. She needs to make sure these coaches know this is where my strengths are. This is where we're staying. We can train in the other areas, but make sure that our main focus is on this skill. That this is our skill. I'm not going to act like I know much about UFC as far as the skills go in the ring, in the octagon, because I'm not a UFC fighter. Okay. What should Ronda Rousey do with her future? If this is going to continue, retirement. I know that's going to be the hardest thing for a fighter to do because you don't want to hang up. You want, especially go out on a losing note. But unless you think you got one more fight left in you, I would go ahead and hang it up. But if you think you can come back and go back to the ground game, go ahead, Rhonda, and do it. Now let's talk about Brock Lesnar, shall we? Brock Lesnar suspended for 1 year. Officially came down. Does it really affect him? No, I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. They suspended for 1 year, and this is going to get a little bit into the wrestling talk too. But they suspended for 1 year, but his daddy Vince McMahon will still pay him out. Vince McMahon still paying him a contract to fight on the WWE circuit, and work for the WWE. I shouldn't say fight because it's not. Yeah, we all know it's scripted. Well, some of us do. WWE is supposed to have a wellness program, but it's a joke. It really is, honestly. And the reason I'm saying that is because people are gonna say, well, he suspended Roman Reigns for drugs or failing a drug test. No, he didn't. Because I've watched wrestling all my life, and there's certain wrestlers, like you had RVD, Sabu, a few others that have been suspended by the WWE for failing drug tests, and it was not very publicized. We only found out about it because it was reported that they were suspended. They never mentioned it on the show, things like that. But with Roman Reigns, they mentioned it on the show and they made it part of the storyline. Because it was part of the storyline. There was never a suspension. Give me a break. I hope you guys aren't buying into Roman Reigns ever being suspended. But anyways, you figure with a federal type agency doing these drug tests, and I call it a federal type agency, but a legit agency doing these drug tests for the UFC, and being that Brock Lesnar failed it, you figured someone like McMahon's going to want to keep his nose clean and say, okay, you know what, I have no other choice. This is an agency that the UFC trusts. This is an agency that many others trust to do drug tests. So we're going to have to suspend you. No, that's not the case. Because you don't suspend a cash cow. And the Royal Rumble coming up, you're not going to suspend him because you want another Goldberg Brock Lesnar battle in the Royal. And that's just how it is. So it's not going to hurt him that he got suspended for 1 year, because he's still a cash cow for Vince, and Vince is going to continue to pay him. He pays him a good salary for being a part-time wrestler. And if it was me, yes, there would probably be a suspension coming. Because a well-known agency and a well-trusted agency found him guilty of steroids or whatever, and suspended him for a year from UFC. You figure, okay, Why won't Vince? No, of course not. Vince is all about the money. He doesn't really care. It's just what it is. Now, there's been a lot of talk of John Jones, Brock Lesnar match when they return. Both will be coming off the suspension at the same time. I don't know if you do that kind of fight when they come off the suspension. That's another thing I wanted to mention about the Roman Reigns suspension. If you did think it was a storyline, why did he get so many opportunities so quick when he came off of this quote unquote suspension? Why was he left in his match? Things like that. So yeah, it's a storyline. But anyways, so that's a match that was that people have been talking about. Why don't you set up a match between those two coming off of Brock Lesnar's suspension? I think it'd be a match people would want to see. But it's all up to the UFC at this point. But the suspension is real in the UFC, so that's all I wanted to really talk about that. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt Brock Lesnar one bit. But Brock Lesnar needs to clean up his act. And unfortunately, as long as you have a guy like Vince McMahon, a suspension like this is never going to hurt Brock Lesnar. So, anyways, I'm going to get on out of here. Everything's in the description bar. Hit that like, comment if you want to talk about these two UFC fighters and your opinions. I love to hear other people's opinions. So I'm going to get on out of here. Catch you all later. Peace.